Hello and welcome to the latest in the G850 podcast, celebrating 850 years of Glasgow. None of us was here 8.5 centuries ago, but I'm delighted to welcome you to the panel for this topic, which is building the next generation of football stars. And someone who's a massive football stars over the years. He's a double winner with Aberdeen and with Celtic, and he won the European Super Cup with the Dons under Alex Ferguson. Delighted to welcome Billy Stark. Billy, welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
Great to see you. That's lovely to see you. Sarah Crilly has had a magnificent career. She is not playing any longer, which I find hard to believe, Sarah, when I met you a few moments ago. You had a great career with Motherwell, Glasgow City, and with Celtic, and you are now the head of the academy at the magnificent Glasgow City. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good to see you. And a familiar face here in this studio, Richard Foster, formerly of Aberdeen and Rangers and many other clubs as well, down south and in Scotland. Too many to list in the next. It'd have to be a 3-hour podcast, Richard. At Motherwell as well, under 19s development coach. Richard, great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
We all love the game. We met about half an hour ago all together. But Billy, you and I met, well, I was watching you and commentating you from the days when you went from St Mirren to Aberdeen, but it was at St Mirren it started for you, and I'm interested to find out. I mean, everyone played football in those days, didn't they?
Yeah.
How did you get to St Mirren?
Well, you always hesitate to go back to the good old days, but everybody played football out in the streets. Yeah. Take a ball to school in the morning, played at playtime, lunchtime, all the rest of it. But the aim was always to try and be a footballer. Lucky for me, Alex Ferguson gave me the opportunity at St Mirren.
Sir Alex?
Yeah. And I signed as an 18-year-old. And pretty much went straight into the first team, playing half the season, half on the bench, and progressed from there.
What were the facilities like then? And who were you training with? What was the structure?
Well, I mean, I think it's a very different world we live in now. I go back to the early days at St Mirren, where we had a drying room down the stairs, and your training kit wasn't washed. So you use your training kit for the whole week. So it was actually stiff. And it was hanging on the hangers down there. So you went down to get your training kit. But it was part-time in the first instance. And then we went full-time. So that was the dream, to become a professional full-time footballer.
And who were the kind of players then that you were playing with? Because you were really... What age were you?
I was 18.
18?
18, yeah. So basically I played secondary juvenile, trained with a few clubs, notably Rangers and Dumbarton actually at the time. But a wee scout at St Mirren called Baldy Lindsay, who actually turned out to be Joe Miller's uncle.
Ah, yeah.
He quite fancied me as a player and kept on at Fergie to give me a chance. So I played a trial game down in Selkirk and signed in the bus on the way back. So no agents in those days.
Wow. And you worked with Alex Ferguson, Sir Alex, as he became, and then he was so massive in your career, and we'll come back to that because it's some of the heroes we want to find out who are going to be the new. And Alex Ferguson, I think he would say, and he will watch this, that he had a really good career, but it's as a manager that he'll be best revered.
Yeah, it's nice to mention him in terms of youth development, because he always tried to get young players into every team that he had. St Mirren, myself, Lex Richardson, Tony Fitzpatrick, Peter Weir, players like that. So then Aberdeen had John Hewitt, Neil Cooper, Eric Black, players like that. So always tried to get young players into the team. European
winners, of course, the Cup Winners' Cup. It must have been absolutely phenomenal. And we'll come back to that, Billy.
Yeah.
Sarah, who was it for you then that helped you to make it and get your break in football?
To be honest, it might be cliche, but my dad, probably. He got me into football, and I'd played with Milton Rovers boys when I stayed in Crilly when I was younger, and then got into Hamilton women from there. Right. So I was there from 13 to 21, I want to say it was. So all the way through the pathway. And my dad was the mainstay, just drive me to training, give me my £2 to go to training and things like that. And then I think it was on my 21st birthday, I then played for Glasgow City in the Champions League, and it just kind of all went from there.
That's some birthday present.
It was great. Yeah, we played Standard Liège at Petershill and I scored, so birthdays don't come much better.
Yeah. And have you seen a big movement, a big development, even in the short time? Because you don't mind me saying, your early 30s, you're now the head of the academy at Glasgow City, and there's been much more attention in the women's game. Are we seeing massive improvements in the development for the young players?
Yeah, definitely. I think they've got more opportunities now than what the girls my age ever really did. It was you played for one team, your local team, and that was it really. And then you moved on if Glasgow City were bigger, Celtic and Rangers came about. But now there's, I don't know how many girls clubs in Glasgow alone, because it was Glasgow City were standalone. We had so many girls, but now there's so many other teams doing the right thing and just giving young girls the opportunity to play. And if they're good enough, they then move into the new next gen environment, which they could then take them down the career of professional football. But then if you also decide, I'm just a recreational football player, there's so many opportunities for you to do that as well now.
Glasgow City, of course, have been the standard bearers for women's football in Scotland. Laura Montgomery joined us on our G850 podcast on women's game, and that's worth watching as well if you haven't. Richard, you're so familiar to TV audiences. You only gave up playing recently. It was Partick Thistle, I think, was just about your final.
Yeah, Partick Thistle. I had a 3-month stint as a player coach in Detroit, but it was more coaching than playing. But yeah, so played until I was 37. And then the body finally said no. Yeah, no more.
And you're involved with Academy. You've been at Motherwell. What is it about who helped you, first of all? Because you were from the north of Scotland.
Yeah, so I just, playing, there's a few tournaments up there that I'd play in. I think it was Neil Simpson was the scout for that area. So I came around and put my name forward. And then it would have been April, I was 11, so turning 12 that year. So 97. Went through to Aberdeen for a trial in the Easter holidays, and it was Drew Jarvie and Chick McClelland, and then then you hear nothing back until I think it was July, and they basically said, look, we want you to come and play, and that was me from 12 years old, signed professional at 16. I think I stayed at Aberdeen until I was 25, 26, but it was probably Drew and Chick would have had the biggest influence on my career. Latterly, Ricky Sheen was my coach, but Drew was pretty much there throughout. Even when I went full time with Steve Patterson, Drew he worked full time at the club, so he was always there. But different times we used to get the train through. He'd pick us up. There was 3 of us, and you'd stay Friday night train. If the game was Sunday, you'd watch the Aberdeen first team game on a Saturday. Or sometimes our game was Saturday, then you go home. So every weekend from 12 till 16, you missed out with your friends, but you were through in Aberdeen playing football. But similar to the guys here, that's all I ever wanted to do.
And the prestige of being at a club like Aberdeen was like what when you were 15, 16? It
was amazing. Aberdeen went through a tough spell. I think one of the seasons must have been, I went in 2001, and I'm pretty sure either that season or 2000 that they could have got relegated, but Falkirk Stadium wasn't big enough.
I remember.
So they stayed up. So it was a challenging time, but like you said, the prestige of being at coming from Elgin, which is small place, then Aberdeen, a massive club. It's the biggest club in my local area, or local enough to me, was amazing. And it was just, as a kid, it's hard to kind of enjoy it as much because you're so overwhelmed by it to start with, but it just became home, and I still speak to a lot of the guys that were there. Stephen Gunn just left Aberdeen recently, but he was there pretty much through my whole time, so you still know people who are still there, so it's great.
Billy, there's so many names here. Of course, Neil Simpson at Aberdeen as well, one of the legends there. You mentioned Joe Miller, and his career was at Aberdeen and Celtic as well. You crisscrossed so many. Drew Jarvie, of course, at Airdrie as a player, and then did well at Aberdeen. It would be easy to say we're not producing as many players now as we did, but where are we with it? You were with the under-21s for Scotland for many years, and then the under-19s until 2024. So it's very recently. If I did say to you, we're not producing enough players anymore, what would you say?
I think it's valid. I think the problem is there's no pathway into the first team for them because the world's changed. There's agents now involved in the game. Players are coming from all over the world to play for teams. So the pressure on managers is such that it's very difficult for them to blood young players because lose a few games, they're under pressure to lose their jobs. So as I say, I think the world's changed and you have to accept that. I think the academies obviously are working hard to produce players, but we don't have the same ratio of players getting the opportunity in the first team now.
Sarah, for the girls' game, is it still, there is the pathway to get through, but how can we make it better?
Well, I think that's the question we'd all like to know the answer to.
If you were in charge, what would you do?
I don't know, it's difficult. Like, the whole point of the Next Gen programme just now is to like bridge the gap between that 16, 17-year-old to the first team. So what we try and do is we've created a bespoke 20s programme, which is kind of like your reserve B team. But similar to yourselves, we're only playing 5-6 fixtures a year, so that's not really sustainable for the girls. We put on training and things like that. But as we spoke about before, most talented 17, 18-year-olds are already playing Premier League football. Now that might be, for Glasgow City, you've got like a Lisa Forrest, that you've got Laura Berry and Jodie McCleary at Rangers, but these are the ones that are getting game time, but there will be girls who are 18 and maybe not quite good enough to break into Celtic, City, Rangers, Hearts. So it's all about providing that environment for them to find their level more than anything. So it might be that I'm going to go and play with Hamilton and get loads of minutes, or Kilmarnock. We've got players out on loan at Kilmarnock that are thriving, and hopefully that another full season, Cara Gray for example, another full season at Crilly, hopefully she'll be ready to move into the Glasgow City environment full time. And I know there's loads of players out there on loan to get the minutes, and that's kind of the key thing right now is for their development. They need to be playing.
Richard, one of the things that you've mentioned on our programme on Go Radio is that the lack of real game time for young players coming through against fully fledged adults who are maybe coming back from injury or whatever to get that experience. Yeah,
and I think the ones that, for me, that miss out the most, they're not the elite band. You know, the Billy Gilmores, the Lennon Millers, because those guys for me will always come through. They're so talented that they'll come through. You know, the young girls that are going straight into first team environments, they will always come through. It's the band below that, the ones that are good players, but they're maybe not developed physically or maybe not quite developed mentally. Those are the ones I think that we're neglecting a little bit. I'm a big advocate for the reserve league because that's what I came through with. I think a B team is a secondary option in my opinion. But I think when I came through, we had our under-19s, a reserve squad and the first team. So even on a daily basis, if you were doing well with the 19s and the reserves needed players, you'd get called up. But they might have had a couple of first team players dropping down. So you're on a daily basis, you're training with first team players. Then on a Monday night, you'd play the reserve games. I played in a reserve game against Celtic actually. We ended up drawing 4 each. But Bobby Petta played, Neil Lennon played, Paul Lambert played. I think they were coming back from injury or they'd been suspended. And I keep hearing there's an argument where people say, but players don't want to play reserves. We never had a choice. You know, if you didn't play for the first team on a Saturday, you played for the reserves on a Monday. And then, you know, it was a mixture of 19s, reserve team and first team. So you got that exposure to what the chat, because these first team guys, and they were all brilliant, they would come down with a good attitude, but then you got to learn what it's like to play in a first team environment, what the demands are, and you start to learn
that jump when you played against a Neil Lennon, for example, international player.
It's you're not ready for it. You can't cope with it. But you start to learn because, I mean, let's be honest, Neil Lennon was never the fastest player on the pitch. But you go, well, why can't I ever get close to him? It's because he moves before you even realise you have to move, and he gets in the right position. And that just comes, it comes because he's a top player. But then you start to learn, you start to understand the game at a better level. But even then, when I broke into the first team at 17, I wasn't ready. Physically wasn't ready, mentally wasn't ready. But now, and Billy touched on it, managers are under so much pressure that they can't afford to put in a young player who's not ready just in case it goes wrong, because then they'll lose their job. So it's a real difficult situation. I think the increase of the league, I think more teams in the league will help, because everybody speaks about, fans don't want the dead rubber games at the end of the season. That's where you bud the youngsters. They might have 5 games at the end of a season where these players are going to go and play because the result doesn't really matter.
But they don't really do it.
But because they don't have any dead rubber games. Yeah. You know, most teams if they fall into the bottom 6, they're fighting relegation, and if you're in the top 6, you're pushing for European slots. So there's no real time. So it takes a real brave manager to go, right, I'm going to put these kids in, knowing they're going to make mistakes and they're not quite ready. So it's a difficult place we're in just now. But I think it's that band below the top 1% that we're really failing, I think.
Billy, do you think we should have a quota of players, young players, which we used to have? They had to be in the squad not that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did, but it was sort of played lip service to that. They put them on the bench, but they would never get near getting on the pitch. Yeah. I would agree wholeheartedly with Richard in terms of the reserve fixtures. In my day, if you didn't play in the first team, you played in the reserves with other experienced players. But as a young player, in terms of the learning experience, you learn more in a reserve game, playing against established players and playing with established players because of the winning mentality as well. Yeah. Whether it was a reserve game or not, they wanted to win. And if you weren't doing your job, you were told. So it was sink or swim. So I think, I can't say he's going back to reserve football, but the other thing about it was you played on your pitch at Celtic Park or Ibrox. And so you were sort of gaining that experience whenever you got the opportunity in the first team.
What was the highlight for you then? Because we all love football. That's why we want to develop youth football. We don't want to lose it because we know that kids have got so many other things they can do now. You know, getting them off their iPads and their Xboxes is probably the biggest challenge these days. But for you, what was one or two of the pinnacles of your career?
Well, obviously I was lucky enough to move from St Mirren to Aberdeen and Celtic and win major trophies, which was always the aim. But the early days of St Mirren when Alex Ferguson was building that young team was really quite exciting. Tony Fitzpatrick, Lex Richardson, Frank McGarvey. So players like that, just playing with a freedom. I think nowadays the academies or football in general is so prescriptive. You play it out from the back, the lack of physicality sometimes. But I think maybe we're starting to see that in the English Premier League now where teams are going a bit longer.
That's right.
And who knows, that might come back.
Twin strikers, that's another aspect of it as well, because the academies now are all systematically playing one striker. So it stands to reason there's not so many strikers being developed. And what was it like then playing in the Glasgow derby, the Old Firm derby?
Yeah, I mean, it was great for me because I managed to score the only goal in the first game, so that got you off to a good start. And
where was that game?
Celtic Park. And the goal was scored after 5 minutes, so you never thought for a minute that would be the winning goal. But
they didn't send it to VAR.
They didn't send it to VAR, no. Probably find a reason to chalk it off. But the football's changed so much. You're talking about VAR. You've got all these sort of different experiences now.
It's maybe not so good for the fans. You played in the derby as well?
Yeah, I have.
Was that your ambition to play for Celtic?
It was always something that I'd like to say that I'd done more so from my family, so it was good to do that. But I would actually say the games against Rangers were bigger when I played for Glasgow City, because Rangers, and no offence to Celtic in this way, like were the better team at that point when the derbies existed. So the Glasgow derby was Glasgow City Rangers at that point. Because it was a bigger game. Celtic weren't quite competitive. Like I think we might have beat Celtic 8-0 that season. So, whereas Rangers, I do remember a very, very wet day at Petershill and we won 2-1, so it was much closer. So they were the games that you enjoyed playing in more.
It's a great thing and it shows you how it changes, because the Old Firm derby is known worldwide, but in the women's game, you've changed it. I mean, I know Celtic are now much better, but that is amazing, the job. And we said that with Laura on the other G850 podcast, that the job done by Glasgow City is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah,
I think as we touched on before, like everybody is waiting on that downfall because teams are investing more and they are challenging. Obviously, Hibs won the league last year. I think for the last 4 years, it's been 4 different winners, which is great for the game. But Glasgow City are always hanging on in there because we have such a good group of players right now, but also the staff behind the scenes. Like everybody has that one goal of like collectively being together, still being that sole women's team, like flying the flag for Scotland. Obviously, we're now in the last 16 of the Europa Cup as well, so the only women's team in Scotland still playing European football. Difficult tie coming up against Sporting Lisbon, but they're the games that you want to play in.
What was your highlight of playing in the game?
Probably my Scotland debut, which a lot of people know about, some people don't know about. So I wasn't actually in the Scotland squad. We were playing Norway in a closed-door friendly at East End Park. And I'd trained with the squad the night before just to make up numbers to do shaping and stuff like that. And I was at uni and they were like, do you want to come and watch the game? And I was a bit like, it's away in Dunfermline. I went to uni in Stirling, but fine, let's go. Yeah. And it got to half time and there was a sickness bug going about the squad. So the team manager at the time shouted up into the stand, is Sarah there? And I was just like, I'm here.
Had you planted something as a bug?
No, definitely not. And it was like, right, a couple of the girls are sick, we need you to go and sit on the bench. And I was like, okay, but I don't have boots with me and I've got very, very small feet. So they're like, we'll get you boots. Christy Murray's boots. I'm a 3, she's a 5. Yeah. Wow. I was in Rachel Corsy's strip, so you can imagine the size of it on me. And then...
Big strip to fill.
Yeah, you bury. And then they were like that, like, just go and warm up, just get the jelly legs away, because I was 20 maybe, I can't really remember, so I was very nervous. I'd done like one up and down and I got called back by Anna Signot at the time for, right, you're going on. So I was like, what?
Yeah.
Trying to put my shinnies on my hands. We're like this. It was Tommy Greig, the sports scientist, grabbed them. He was like, calm down. There's no pressure on you here. Just go. I think I'd been on for 10 minutes and I scored.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
So everybody was just laughing. Somebody referred to it as Roy the Rovers, but that was before my time. So I didn't know what they were talking about.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah. But that was, and then like my friends were phoning my dad being like that. Sarah's just scored for Scotland, and he's like that. What? She wasn't even in the squad.
You thought you were at uni that morning?
Basically, aye.
Yeah.
So
That's a wonderful story.
Very memorable.
I think I'm on the wrong podcast. International caps and goals, European cups.
I know. Hey,
You know what I mean?
well, you only played in the Champions League.
Aye, but I never won it.
Well, but yeah, you played in it. But what about the derby, the Old Firm derby?
Yeah, don't want to talk about that. Played 3, lost 3.
Yeah. but what was it like? Because we're thinking about, for young people coming in thinking, I might not be the best in the world, which you always say. I mean, you're a really good player. You're very self-deprecating, but you're not trying to say you were the best. But so what was your success? And tell us what that felt like.
I think I'm one of the players that would struggle now to make it.
Why?
Because I wasn't that, right, he's, a Billy Gilmore, he's a standout for I was standout from a young age at my own team and that level, but then when you go into the full-time environment, I was just a good player. I was quick, was my thing. But I think I would struggle to break through because where would I get the time to go and play? But yeah, so many memories of playing, and all you want to do is you want to play football. I made my debut 17, I think it was at April time, playing against Park Thistle at Pataudry. Took the best first touch I've ever taken, ball at miles in the sky, dropped it onto my thigh, and thinking, I've cracked this, gave the ball away. And you can remember little snippets like that, and then you score your first goal at Dundee, which was a tap-in, and then pretty quickly I became a defender, so scoring goals wasn't my thing, but played in so many good games. The Old Firm games are chaos to play in. Brilliant experiences, but I played in that cup replay at Celtic Park when Bugera grabbed the referee and there was, I think it was about 5 folks sent off at the end of it. But these are...
But not you.
Not me,
Which is amazing.
I was actually the peacemaker, and most of the scenes you can see me try to calm everyone down, which is a first. But no, it was a fantastic experience. But
I'd see the jelly legs. Sorry, Sarah said about the jelly legs before. I can only imagine. I never played professional football. How do you stay calm going into the derby?
I don't think you do stay calm. Okay. I think it takes it probably takes a lot of experience to be calm. I always felt, even playing in games where you were the better side and you pretty much thought you were going to dominate the game, I still felt that kind of nervousness in my belly. I enjoyed that feeling. But yeah, I don't think you control that, only with experience. But it's almost like you go onto the pitch and the nervous part is getting onto the pitch, but then once you're actually there, most of the time you're able you get lost in the game because it happens so quickly. And then it's funny because when you watch games back or people are commentating, and I obviously commentate on games now, he's made a mistake because he's nervous. He's not. He's probably not nervous now. He's just made a mistake because it's a poor pass, whatever it is. But you think, I'm going to go on there and I won't be able to take a touch. I won't be able to pass the ball. But one of the things I used to have, and it was the weirdest thing ever, it's called compartment syndrome. You get it in your calves. It's basically when the muscle is too big for the fascia around it and it traps your nerve. So my foot would go numb. So I can remember taking corners for Aberdeen and I can't feel my right foot. So I'm just relying completely on muscle memory. Now, a lot of Aberdeen fans will go, well, that kind of tracks. He probably had that most of the time. But it was just a weird thing. But I think that came from a nervous tension before the game, that everything was so tight. And thankfully, I was able to get over that. But see, try to take a corner when you can't feel your foot. Now, that is a worrying time.
It's interesting, Richard. My Old Firm debut, I had played for Aberdeen, played in cup finals. That's the most nervous I ever was in the morning of the game. And obviously played the second Old Firm game of the season was at Ibrox, was the famous, Richard's talking about sending offs. That was the famous Three Bears, McAvenny, Chris Woods.
The goalkeeper. We've seen it recently on the telly because of the anniversary.
It's quite interesting when you look at that, because talking about teamwork and team spirit, McAvenny was on his own. The rest of us didn't take anything to do with it. He was a human punch bag up there in the penalty box.
All end up in the Sheriff Court on the Monday.
Exactly,
a huge story. Bizarre. At the time. But that's interesting. So was that the game here in Glasgow was the one where you felt really nervous? Do you think it was the build-up and the importance?
I think so.
The two tribes?
The Graham Souness revolution had started at Rangers. They'd won the league the previous season. So Billy McNeil had come in just as new manager at Celtic, and a lot of pressure on the first Old Firm game of the season, but luckily we were able to win it.
Scotland did really well, Scotland's men, in 1982, the under-18s championship.
Yeah.
Why didn't we build on that?
It's a difficult question. I mean, I think to answer it in a sort of wholehearted manner, the ratio of players that come through to have good careers at a reasonably top level is not the same as it was in those days. The Charlie Nicholases and all the rest of it that played. I was fortunate to work with the under-19s and under-21s, as you say, Richard. So you're working with the cream of the country's young talent, but the ratio of players that came through and really had top careers, notably Callum McGregor, James Forrest. Now, whenever I had them at under-19 level, I wasn't thinking James Forrest was going to become the most decorated Celtic player in history. But they're few and far between in terms of the ones that come through and have a full career at the top level.
And his style of play, of course, has almost gone out of fashion, hasn't it? And he's still he's certainly one of the best at Celtic still.
Well, Richard and I were talking about that before we come on air there, about how wingers now just pass the ball back. So you need somebody in your team that can beat a player. And James, over the years, has been a fantastic servant to Celtic.
What about Queen's Park over the years? Of course, our oldest club. But what they've done with the youth development is worthy of praise.
Well, I actually had a spell 4 years there as head coach, and we brought through Stuart Kettle being the sort of most notable, but they were playing for just the love of the game, amateur at that stage. And the way the game's developed with the pyramid system now, it was inevitable that Queen's Park would have to go professional. But in those days, you had boys that came in with a fantastic attitude, just wanted to play. And that's what you were looking for.
Andy Robertson's somebody who, of course, the Scotland captain, who I think was at Celtic, then it didn't happen for him, and he was at Queen's Park.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Richard was being a bit self-deprecating there in terms of his playing ability, but there's so many aspects that makes a player nowadays in terms of dynamism, speed, physicality, and all the rest of it. So they're all really key concepts now.
Oriam, of course, was established then as the kind of sort of national base. We don't have a St George's Park like England. I guess that's probably down to the economics. We don't have the money in the game. Oriam being in the east of Scotland, you'd have thought the football heartland is Glasgow and the west.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oriam obviously became the football centre for the SFA, but rugby's still the number one sport. So at times it felt as if we were second-class citizens there, if I'm honest. So, you know, it's not a St George's Park, but, you know, we don't have the infrastructure or the budget to build a place like that.
And we should have, obviously, what was Lesserhammed in the City Stadium is now magnificent for Scotland to be preparing there. But I found it always curious that we were going through to Edinburgh, and as you say, it's for the rugby. It was set up for the rugby.
Yeah.
Is that a lack of ambition? I'm not trying to have a go at the authorities here, but you know, we're a nation of football lovers. It's the national sport.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few tendered to be a national sports centre, Stirling being one of them. I think that was favourite. So it was a bit of a surprise when Oriam got it. But as I say, it's used, Hearts use it as well. So, and obviously the rugby. So it's no, you know, the only place that the football takes part. Club-led
youth models, are they working? Do you think, Richard? I know you're working in it, so we have to watch what we say. But
you don't want to be overly critical because the game has changed and the mentality's changed and society's changed. Kids are different now. I get all that, but it's even when I'm just sitting here thinking of what it is. We've now got a system, a tiered system where you have an elite level and a performance level, and it's based on the academy criteria. So do you have enough coaches? And so we, for example, when you play the Youth Cup, we've played St Johnstone and been beat from them, and Ross County and been beat from them, and they're good sides, but they're playing in a league, and they constantly dominate the league, the two of them, because they're playing against a lot of teams who are not quite at the level. So I think those players are missing out playing from against the best players in the country because their academy doesn't meet the criteria, which for me is a nonsense. You know, and you say maybe let's easy count and you have 40 teams that are going to play. Well, then you just structure it to go right. Well, what's the standard of the player like? Because we done it at Aberdeen, we were a relatively good team, but we had Dunfermline in our league. Now Dunfermline at that time weren't quite as far down the journey as obviously Aberdeen weren't as established, and we'd play games against them and you'd beat them quite comfortably. But then, and I'm not saying that's the way forward, because it's horrible to lose 5, 6, 7, 8-0. And who really develops from that. But there has to be a point where you can't have a Ross County, a St Johnstone, a Partick Thistle, for example, playing in a league where everything's too easy for them. Yeah. And they're probably some of the best players in their age group, but they don't play against Celtic and Rangers and Aberdeen and Hearts because of a criteria. And I think that's why is a player's development missing out, because their academy doesn't tick a box. I mean, that to me just doesn't add up. It should be, let's get the strongest teams all playing each other, so the strongest players are playing each other. Obviously, I know B team now seems to be the way to go, but again, even that, I think the authority should be saying to teams, you must have a B team. Don't come back to me with this, we don't have enough money.
Because Aberdeen, huge club, do they have a B team?
They don't have a B team. They've recently changed their structure with their under-19s because, as I was saying earlier, at that age group, they believe players should be going out and playing men's football, which you can agree with to a certain degree. But I think that these teams, who, by the way, are spending more money than ever on their first teams now, I mean, they spend more money on their first team than they did when I was coming through. But I think these teams should be made to have a B team, at least a B team, because therefore then there is a 17s, 19s, B team, first team. There's a progression, and it gives kids time to develop, because some kids are ready at 16. Yeah. Some kids are not ready until they're 20. But if that 20-year-old only gets the first 2 years and they get binned at 18, then a lot of them fall out of the game because they have to go and get jobs, they have to earn a living, and they go and play recreationally. And you're possibly losing 2 years of development just because there's nowhere for them to go and play.
Sarah?
I kind of agree, to be fair. It's the same as us. We tick the boxes to meet the criteria, but there are clubs that don't. There are clubs that have tried to meet this criteria so that they are playing against the best of the best, but haven't quite made it and had to fall away. But they still have a really good group of players. But parents still see the next gen, the CAS, as my daughter needs to be playing there if she wants to make it, whereas that's not the case, because there are so many good regional teams out there for SWF that I know when we used to have our regional teams, my best regional team beat a lot of next gen teams, but because we already had a next gen, we couldn't enter another next gen. So, and I think there's quite a few, and maybe in the most recent 16 Scotland girls squad, there's a lot of regional players rather than maybe playing at Hearts, Celtic City. So there is talent out there, but it is, what do you then do with them? The same as you guys. We tried the reserve league back when I played, but it fell in the same strand and pathway as the SWPL. So I think it went like SWPL, which was just the one at the time, Championship, then Reserve League. But it meant if you won the Reserve League, you got promoted to the Championship, but you couldn't if it was like Celtic Reserves, City Reserves. And at that point, it was City, Celtic, Rangers, Hibs, Spartans, I want to say, who were the best teams in the Development League. Yeah. So it was the 6th team that was getting promoted. So it was Boroughmuir. And that, to this day, is how Boroughmuir have managed to get into the PL, because they finished 6th in the Reserve League once upon a time and got promoted. And to be fair to them, they've obviously became a mainstay, which is really, really good. But it didn't work in the women's game, so I don't know if it would work now because of obviously what we said earlier. But there is definitely talent out there that we need to do better with, because if they're not at the 17s or whatever it is what do they then do? Because, as you said, everybody develops at different ages and stages, whether it's growth and maturation, just technical ability, awareness, everything. I would have said personally, I didn't hit my peak till I was 23, 24, but then you've got Aaron Cuthbert, who was unbelievable at 16. Yeah. And I don't think we're ever going to get away from that, unfortunately, because everybody does develop at different rates.
Yeah, and that's the problem you have. There's a big fallout. I've got a next door neighbour, a young lad who's been in 2 or 3 academies and obviously released, so effectively rejected. Doesn't play football at all now.
Really? What age?
He'll be 21 now, but he was sort of from the age of 14, 15.
Because you're made to feel special if you're playing. Whoever it is signs you. Yeah. I mean, for most boys and girls, we never make it to professional football. I joke with Mark Guidi because he was the St Mirren reserve goalkeeper on air. But I'm envious. because he played for St Mirren. It's fantastic. That must be so hard for young people if they are released, especially for the third time or whatever, because they're lost into the game, and for their own life as well, and fulfilment. All that ability that they had is possibly lost then.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the big part that we don't really think of now. The parents are so invested in their kids as well, turning up at games and, investing a lot of time, travelling all over the country to training sessions, games and all the rest of it. So it's hard. It's really hard.
They must drive you a bit crazy, mind you, on the sideline, some of the parents, because we can all get a bit over
I think that's the other thing that's been a big change from the old days. The best players played. Nowadays, you have to find time for everybody to get minutes and dealing with parents that are not happy because their young lad or young girl's not getting enough game time.
That is an issue. No Ball Games was perhaps going to be the name of this programme, but it's not. We're talking about the development of youth football in Scotland and young players, boys and girls. But No Ball Games was a dreaded sign. Was it there when you were playing, Sarah?
Yeah, we used them as goalposts.
As goalposts, yeah. And when was that? That's not that long ago. So that was in the...
That would have been, what? 25 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
They were still, and they still kick about there now, but folk just ignore them.
Is that right?
Best bit of grass about, No Ball Game sign.
Because when Billy and I were growing up, there was no such thing. Everyone played in the street. Now, and we all know the rise in car ownership. It was the black and white days, wasn't it?
It was.
But it's in colour, obviously. But it seems when you look back, but everyone honestly was out in the streets playing football, and then the No Ball Game sign. Did that happen in Elgin as well?
Yeah, well, our house was like a gable end, so we had one on the side of our house, but there was no grass there. It was just a big, it was like a kind of extended pavement. But I would go out and use it as a target, and then
it didn't work.
No, I missed the house most of the time. But you're using that and you're playing, and then there were times as I've got older, you come in and not at the same house, obviously, and you hear the thud of the ball against the wall and you think, Jesus, that is bloody annoying. No wonder my parents chased me out there. But no, we were largely the same. You'd see a no ball and you would use it either as a goalpost or as a target or something, because nobody would marshal it. Yeah. Now, obviously, if you're knocking the ball against the side of a house, it does become really quite annoying. But if you're out in a field and a bit of grass and there's a no ball game sign there, I mean, what are you harming? You're not doing anyone any harm. And I think, but you don't see it as much, but it's probably because, Billy spoke about it earlier, that, it's football's prescriptive now, but that isn't just how they play, it's how they train and where they need to be, and it's regimented. So kids, my son's now at Aberdeen Academy, his mum and among others are taking him through there 3 nights a week. He's then going through a fourth for the game on a Saturday. So you're 4 out of your 7 nights. He's got school, he's just gone into third year, so he's an important year for school. Yeah. So when does he have the time? Whereas I think for me, I trained, it was a Friday night in Aberdeen, you played at the weekend, and I would train 2 nights a week. So they used to call them satellite stations. It was in Aberdeen, it was Neil McIntosh, and he would take the Aberdeen group. Yeah. But it was a varying age range, and I was the oldest player there, and he used to put restrictions on me because it was too easy for me playing against younger kids. Yeah. So I was always 1 and 2 touch. Yeah. So then he was like, look, if I give you all in, you're just going to run past everyone. So it was good from him to recognise that I needed the restrictions.
And good for you as well.
But that was local. That was at Gordonston training.
Yeah.
So
you at Gordonston? Yeah.
I didn't go to Gordonston. I lived 5 miles from it. Yeah. But so I never had to really travel to train during the week. So I had loads of time. So every day after school, I was with my mates playing football, or then I was training. Mm-hmm. And then as I got older, the Gordonston thing, it became too young for me. I would then go and train with Highland League teams. Mm-hmm. So at 15, 16, I'm training with men at Highland League teams, but again, 2 nights a week. So you still have loads of extra time. Whereas now, a lot of the time, because there are gym programs, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that I started my gym program at 16 and didn't really ever feel that I was not strong enough to play football. Yeah. I think that's enough time, but now we're trying to, a gym program at 12, 13, 14.
I know.
What's the point?
Highland League teams, they must be able to tossing the caber, because they'll tell you there'll be some hardy souls there.
But again, it did toughen you up.
Did you ever play with the ball? It'd be pretty hard going there.
But
all around places.
And it was, and a lot of them are older, more experienced players, and I'm quick and I'm running past them and they don't like it. So then you're going to get a slap, and but then you have to learn to ride tackles. You have to learn, that if you try and be, too big-headed or too arrogant, you're going to get knocked right back down. So it was a good grounding for me, and I really enjoyed it. But it still allowed me to have more time to actually play football on my own with that freedom. Be a kid,
It's a good point, that, because I think when you look at it, the young lads and girls that are in academies, the only football time they get is sanitised training sessions.
Yeah.
They don't play with their mates. You wonder what sort of effect that has. There's a sort of freedom to that.
Yeah, like we've got young girls so we're now only allowed to play with their boys' teams if you're in the Next Gen programme until you're 10 or 11, whatever age it is. So it's like, so we've got girls that are training Monday, Wednesday, Friday with us at 10 years old, 11 years old, playing with their boys' team Tuesday, Thursday, playing with us Saturday, boys' team Sunday, so they don't have time to go and be a kid. At all, and that's a big thing for me, because I will always encourage my parents, like, do as much activity and physical activity as you can, but we've then got to manage that load, because they're doing whatever they're doing at school, PE or school football and things like that, which you've got to take everything into account, because you'll all know the history of like serious knee injuries in women's football. It came from everybody in my generation doing too much. So the last thing we need is to have it happening again, because we're not managing the load of 12-year-olds.
Billy, what about that thing, no ball game? No ball games. It was just, you thought, what is this thing when it started to go up? But it went everywhere until 2019, where local authorities now have to provide adequate facilities around areas.
Not before time.
No.
Obviously, I watch my grandsons at the weekends now, and the facilities are, AstroTurf pitches and all the rest of it, so the game's going to be on. So there's a lot to be thankful for nowadays. But in the old days, it was different, there's no doubt about it.
How are we going to make it better then? Because look at the success you've enjoyed, and with the under-21s as well, and with the under-19s and your own career. How are we going to get back? The women did really well, 5 or 6 years ago at the World Cup. The men's game, well, not so good, but of course we've a couple of tournaments in a row. Hopefully we're going to the World Cup in 2026. What do you feel for the future?
I think we have to recognise where we are in the world. There's the breakup of the Soviet Union and all the rest of it. These countries that were previously a part of it, we just dismiss them as they've got development programmes that are producing top players. You look at the Georgian guy that plays for PSG. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name.
No, he's some player,
Yeah, so, I think managing the expectations is very difficult. So I think the big thing is recognising where we are. And back in the 50s, 60s, we had a big jump on other countries because of the physicality that we had. But technically, they've all caught up. So we have to try and match that.
We have to be better technically.
Yeah, we have to.
And the coaching as well, we can be better. How can we improve that?
Yeah, the coaching, obviously, we go back to my days as a player. The coaching's improved seismically. There's no doubt about that. The coaching programmes, the SFA are world renowned for the coaching programmes they put on. So I don't think there's any question about the coaching. I think we just have to recognise that the pathway for young players is no longer there because of the previous thing we talked about foreign players coming in, players coming up from non-league in England and all the rest of it, and the pressure's on managers to try and win games.
That is a great point. People like Mourinho came to Scotland and that's not that long ago, and they've got such high regard for us. So we've got something wrong in the system, Richard, that these coaches learning here as well, teaching young players, but not enough of our young players. For me, it begins to sound like we need some kind of quota system.
So I disagree slightly with Billy in terms of the coaching, because I think the level of coaching is better, and obviously there's more structure and stuff like that. But I think we've got into a position now where coaching is about the coach. And the coach tells you, this is how I play, and this is what I want my teams to do, and this is what I want to do. And for me, to be a coach, what you have, so if you look at a squad of players, and now in youth coaching, you don't get to handpick your players. It's all, you might in one season have 3 fullbacks come through and come in full time because they're your 3 best players. So it's then about, right, how do I pick a system that fits them? Instead of going, no, I play 4-3-3, I play 4-3-3, your two best players are strikers. Oh no, I still play 4-3-3. And you go, so this one of these, or both of these kids, their development then suffers because of your system. And we hear it all the time, that's how I play, that's how I want my teams to play. For me, football philosophy has got nothing to do with a formation. Formation is dictated by the players that you have. And I think coaching has become too much about the coach and not about the players that are coaching.
Yeah, I think I sort of mistakenly made a generalisation there. The coach has a personality, and there's definitely a skill about youth coaching in terms of bringing through young players. It's different from managing first teams.
Yeah.
So I think it's about getting the right people in the right place.
It is. I mean, so the coaches they're under so much pressure as well. We know that. I mean, look at Ange Postecoglou, about 39 days not that long ago in Nottingham Forest.
He got about £6 million for it, so be all right.
Sarah at Glasgow City.
I would agree with Billy there. Like, we try when we're recruiting coaches, getting the right people more than anything to make sure we've got our game model and stuff. And it was more regimented last year, but we've now kind of given the coaches that flexibility to put their own spin rather than you must do this. Formations are always flexible because, as you said, we've got really good fullbacks or whatever it is. We've got to make sure that their development's at the forefront of what we're doing. So we need coaches that buy into that, and it's not about winning. You can't play that formation because it'll win you the game. Like, we've got to focus on the player development. So we do actually have a really, really good, strong group of coaches from our performance academy right to our junior academy of people who want to be here and want to better the players, which definitely helps to our success.
That's what and I once done a session, and I won't name the team or where it is because that's not fair. And it was my friend.
Can we guess?
No, you probably won't. No. But my friend he was part of the coaching setup, and he just said to me, obviously, can you come and do a session? The players would really like it because I was a current professional at the time. And afterwards, and the coach, one of the coaches said something to me, and I thought, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard in terms of football. He went, oh, that was really good. You're so enthusiastic. And I thought, that's the one thing you can always bring. Even if you have no knowledge, you can always bring enthusiasm. And I thought, for that to be the thing that you pick out, obviously it means I'm a terrible coach, but I'm really enthusiastic about it. But it's just a strange thing for me. And I think as youth coaches, I think that is because it becomes serious at first team level and reserve level. But as a youth coach, you must want to do it and be enthusiastic to try and help the players, I think. I mean,
people in the men's game, like Lennon Miller, for example, recently, he's a shining example, isn't it? We want more. There are others as well around the clubs, but he's somebody that stayed for a while at Motherwell, and it didn't do him any harm. In fact, it was really good for his development. He got game time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the thing. Obviously, take good counsel from his father as a professional. Yeah. But I think we were talking earlier about the comparison between Lennon Miller and Bailey Rice. I think there was interest in Lennon going.
Yeah, they both could have went to Rangers at the same time.
So I think one stayed and got first team football, which is the most important thing, as Richard says. And Bailey Rice has been sort of swallowed up in the system at Rangers and the pressures it's on to play young players.
What's success for us then? What do you think? I mean, obviously World Cup, hopefully in the men's game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have clubs playing in Europe year in, year out, and we've got to look at the coefficient dropping a wee bit. Yeah. But we have to try and get that back up again. But in terms of the national team, it would be great to get back to a World Cup. A long time since we've been there. And, if we go recently to the games, I think we'll all be forgotten about the performances. The results were the most important thing. So if we can get these 2 victories that would get us automatic qualification, it would be a great thing.
Richard, what does the future look like, do you think? What changes can we make then? Because it needs to be better.
I think we need to find a way of having a consistent player progression, a consistent level of players coming through, because like I said before, your Lennon Millers, your Billy Gilmores, they will always come through at any academy because they're good enough players. But we need to consistently be pushing players through into first team systems. I think we need to play more Scottish players in our Scottish teams. For me, it's quite alarming when you look through the list of team lines and you don't see many Scots in the team. But I think for the men's game and the women's game, if we have a consistent level of players coming through, then that then drives the standard. I think when you don't have that and it's a bit sporadic, and then you have players coming from England or elsewhere who don't really care about our system, I think then things start to fall down. I think we need more Scottish coaches, and I certainly think we need to play more Scottish players in the team.
Have we got a Scottish problem? We don't value the talent coming from these islands in the way that we should.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, I think the point Richard makes is a valid one, that the only way we can improve the national game in Scotland is for young Scottish players to be given the opportunity, and we keep coming back to that. The pathway is no longer there for them to get into first team football.
Sarah, you're dealing with, 200 young players coming through?
140 we've got now.
140, yeah. That's a big responsibility.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How much do you enjoy it working with young players?
To be fair, like I kind of see me in some of the girls. Like just there are girls that have not quite had the opportunities that some of our younger ones now do. So it's trying to have them as role models, but you've got to encourage these young ones. Like our best team for the last 2 years, no doubt about it, is our under 13s. But so like I've got Leanne Ross being like, when are they coming through? It's like a wee while yet, because they're 11. But it's just things like that. We need to keep encouraging these young girls, like they're on the right path. It's not going to happen overnight. You might need to drop down a level to then come back. And as you said, there's so many players lost in that gap between you're in a pathway or you've not made first team. So it's what we do to support the girls. And then I think if you look at the national team, like our results haven't been great in the last couple of years. Like we've not been qualifying for tournaments, but when you look at the squad, when we did qualify for tournaments, there were a lot of Scottish-based players at the time. Now, I couldn't, there's not many, 4 or 5 maybe at most, because they're all, rightly so, away playing wherever they're playing professional contracts. So if we can manage to bring more youth players through and get them game time at a first team level, then who's to say in 5-10 years time we can get back to that maybe 60-40 ratio that 40% of them actually still play in Scotland, but then you're relying on other clubs and investment, and that's easier said than done. Could some of the young players be doing, as the men's game, say Ben Gannon Doak, for example? So he sort of bypassed, he was at Celtic as a young player, played a few games, age 16, but he went to Liverpool. Is that happening in the women's game, that they're going early? They're not going that early. Okay. I think Emma Watson's the kind of one-off. She's went, I think she was 16 when she went, but the opportunity is there to go that early. But I would say selfishly, we would rather retain them for at least another couple of years to help their development, because they would go down there and not get game time unless they're a superstar, like an Aaron Cuthbert, for example. Like Kirsty McLean, who played with Rangers, outstanding up here, is referred to as Iniesta, but doesn't get as much game time as she wants to at Liverpool, but she made the step at the right time for her development, I would say so. But there's so many players that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I think that's the same in the men's team. Like, how many players have left Celtic or Rangers thinking Premier League and they've disappeared and are playing with Harrogate Town or Luton Town or whoever it is. And there's still big money there. Nothing like what they would have hoped to get in the game, but that's one of the issues, Richard. It must be sad on a Saturday when you're giving the team news. And look, where it's a small world, we don't care where people come from, but just when you look at it, sometimes it's completely, you make it one.
I think one of the nights in Europe, I looked at it, and we had 4 teams playing, and there were 12 Scottish players started the game. Is that right? So it was just over a quarter. And I think for me, it should be the other way around. It should be 75%. Right. So if you were running Scottish football then, final question to all of you, what would you do to improve the development of youth in Scotland? I would alter the structure. I would make it less clinical at a younger age. There has to be more freedom that players can go and play. And I know that clubs would never buy into that, because you can go and play for your local team and get injured. But I would say, look, you can't be as strict on how much of their time you take up. I would say we need to bring in a B team / reserve team, so there's a natural progression to give people longer in the game. I wouldn't go as far as saying you can only have a certain quota of foreign nationals playing in your team, because no team now is going to go for that. But there has to be, if you don't show a definitive pathway and yes, you've got players coming through, then questions need to be asked, and teams need to be more accountable. That we can't just, you look at a situation at Rangers where they've signed Mikey Moore, who's 18 on loan, and he plays instead of Finlay Curtis, who's an academy player, and by the way, goals, who's better, in my opinion, right now than Mikey Moore. So why? And I know that's a manager's choice, but why are we allowing that? But it's that whole thing when I said anti-Scottish. I'm not being. No, but we need to be pro-Scottish, because he's come from Tottenham. We think, oh wow, he should play. So and again, I know we're nearly out of time, but promote what we are and what we're good at. We are in your face, up and at them, aggressive. That's what Scotland are. So why not promote our own way instead of trying to adopt different styles? Because I like the style that we've got here. I like the aggression and the emotion, and we need to get better technically, but we can improve that. No, that's easier to improve than giving a kid aggression or giving them emotion. So I think there's a few things that we can do, but it would take a collective. It would take all the governing bodies and all the teams to fully buy into it, and I think that's one of the big issues. Sarah, would you vote for him
Richard, running Scottish football? Maybe not. What would you do to change it then? Our final thought.
I think in the women's game, it's going in the right direction. Like with Mick McArdle coming in as a performance manager, there has been a restructure which has been long needed, and it is going in the right way, but we're still, as I said, only 18 months to 2 years in. Like, we are 10 years behind England, we're 20 years behind Germany, so we are playing catch up, but we've got to go within our means more than anything. So like, focus, as you said, what we're good at as a nation and develop that, and we'll see where that takes us.
Billy Stark, you gave half of Glasgow a highlight of the G850 years, and 88, the double year for Celtic, which is so special in the centenary year.
Yeah. I say, I don't want to hark back to the good old days, but
go on.
Richard's point about reserve football, I don't know if it'll ever be brought back, but for me, the benefits of it were there for everybody to see. You learned off senior professionals. And the identity thing that Richard's talking about in terms of the Scottish identity, we need to get back to that. As I say, we had the jump on other countries in the 50s, 60s because of our natural aggression, and we have to bring that back to the Scottish game.
Did you bring any of your medals with you today for it? Because that's what you want young people to be inspired. Did you ever bring it out at the training or whatever and say, come on, that's what we're going for?
Well, I've shown my grandsons them, but they're sort of disinterested, to be honest with you. So they're too busy on their computers and all the rest of it nowadays, but no.
Billy, Sarah, Richard, thanks so much for joining us in this G850 special. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoy playing football at whatever level, developing, and you could be a Billy Gilmer, you could be a Callum McGregor, you could be a Dennis Law, maybe, which was before all our times. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching.